I think we need to really promote inclusive education, and that there is amazing inclusive education within the Middle East, because people like me, before I met you, Matt, didn't believe it existed.
To reach the inclusion point, we have to educate, raise awareness and understanding and knowledge and understanding. And that's what we place great emphasis on, whether that's within school settings, within the community, within spaces and places where our families and our children access. So not being afraid to be the voice for our children, the voice for our families, engaging with our families. Our parents' voices are more powerful than our voices.
Today, I'm delighted to welcome Matt Campion, who's director as part of the Qatar Foundation, Renowned Academy. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Hi, Mark. Thank you very much. Everything's good. Thank you. Thank you.
Good. And I think there's no better place to start than just to kind of find out a bit about you, Matt Campion, and how did you kind of get into where you are today? So where did it all begin?
Sure. So I qualified as a mainstream teacher actually in 2001. So I'd always wanted to work in education. So qualified as a mainstream teacher and started working initially in a primary school in Manchester. So on the outskirts of the city centre, working with amazing children and colleagues for 7 years. So teaching children from the age of 7 to the age of 11. Always really within that held a very strong interest in special educational needs. So many of the children that I worked with worked or had additional needs in the school that I was working in, but really had a passion and a desire to move into the pure field of special education. So after 7 years, I applied for and was lucky enough to be appointed to a special school which was very close to the mainstream school I was working in. So that was the start of my journey in the field of SEN. So in 2008, moved to an outstanding special school working with children with physical disabilities, with complex medical conditions, with life-limiting conditions, speech and language, and a range of different challenges from the ages of 2 to the age of 16, and really felt like I became a teacher all over again. So even though I'd been teaching for those 7 years, had to learn to work and support students who may be pre-verbal, who had complex medical conditions, who maybe needed the physical support, the emotional support. I was very lucky to step into a school that was truly outstanding, and colleagues who supported my development as a teacher initially. In the 5.5 years I was in the school, I then moved on from being a teacher to the assistant head teacher. So then had that overview of the secondary department in the school then as the assistant head. And then purely locationally, within that time, I met my future wife. We got married, and I moved from Manchester to the Wirral. And the daily commute in traffic of around 4 hours became something which was a real challenge. So eventually, after 5.5 years, I moved to become the deputy head of a special school in Chester. So I then moved to working with students who we had 3 tracks in our school. So children from the age of 2 to the age of 19, and children and young adults with profound and multiple learning disabilities, autism, severe learning difficulties. So a broad range of children. Again, great school, working with great colleagues, working with great children. Really enjoyed that experience. And then beyond that, always held an interest of working internationally. So it's not very often that you see pure special schools around the world. You will see jobs in special education, maybe Senko positions, but not to go and work in a pure school. And I saw an advertisement to be the principal of Renowned Academy, who is part of the Qatar Foundation. So made an application and went through the first round of applications and was longlisted for the final 10, and that became the final 3. And fortunately, I was appointed as the principal. So joined in 2018, and at Renowned, we are the first and only school purely for autism in the country. So established under the guidance of Her Highness Sheikh Kamosa bint Nasser, the mother of the Emir, to support students with autism in the country. So the school has grown. I was principal for the first 4 years. I've been the director for the last 2. This is my 3rd year as school director. School has really grown. We've grown from, when I arrived in 2018, 52 children in 6 classes. We now have 19 classes with 144 children, 115 staff, education staff, teachers, assistants, speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists, specialist teachers, and we're really a third the way through our growth. We add classes every year, and when we reach our maximum capacity in a future buildings, we're in a ministry building right now, but we will move to a purpose-built building. We'll have between 400 to 450 children and young adults from 3 to 21, all of whom will have a formal diagnosis of autism. So provision has really grown, it's really changed, and I'm in a very, very, very privileged place to be the director of this school.
So exciting. And Matt, you and I have had many conversations previously, and you know about my um, sort of affiliation with inclusion,
Yeah,
particularly with my son, and understanding that provisions in the Middle East. I mean, my preconception was that inclusion wasn't there.
yeah,
Um, However, recent sort of research, I've actually realized there are organizations such as yourselves that
yeah,
are doing such wonderful things, which is one of the main reasons why I wanted to bring you on this podcast, really, to share what the Qatar Foundation are really doing and Bernard Academy are doing and what you're doing is absolutely tremendous, really. And I want to talk more about that, really, because I think we need to really promote inclusive education and that there is amazing inclusive education within the Middle East because people like me, before I met you, Matt, didn't believe it existed. I
yeah.
know a lot of the Middle East are really trying hard and it's really improving, but I think you guys are ahead of the game slightly. So why do you think that is? Why do you think you kind of jumped the gun in front of everyone else?
Yeah, I think I suppose what I would say in the first instance is that we're very fortunate to be part of the Qatar Foundation because it's a huge organisation. So that gives us opportunity that maybe a standalone school might have to battle for recognition or support. Well, the support's there for us. So we have the backing of a large foundation. You know, there's over 50 entities, more than 4,500 colleagues across the whole organisation. So we have access to many different facilities, different environments, different colleagues who can support us. I think maybe the main thing is that our focus to reach the inclusion point, we have to educate, raise awareness and understanding and knowledge and understanding. And that's what we place great emphasis on, whether that's within school settings, within the community, within spaces and places where our families and our children access. So raising awareness of autism, dispelling many of the myths that sit around autism. And I think I'm speaking about autism because that's my school, but I think that is true of all special educational needs. It's taking away the myths of the can't do. What we focus on is on the can do, on the ability. So
Mm.
we are not stuck as a school on a disability. We don't see autism as a disability. We see it as a unique part of our children, and our children are unique and they're amazing. So it's showing people that. So it's the raising the awareness, the training. So we conduct trainings in the community. We do lots of trainings with our parents and our families, but very much with businesses, with restaurants, with the malls, with transport, with the airline, all those elements there to raise an understanding of autism. And again, as I say, to take away some of the preconceptions. And then it's challenge, not being afraid to challenge. Don't be afraid to challenge what is the current status quo. It's our children, and I speak on behalf of my school, but I can speak on behalf of all schools that have children with additional needs. Our children have the same rights as every other child. So what we do as a school, as a foundation, if there's a barrier, we work to take the barrier away. We work through that, but taking people with us. I think the education part, because what we need this process to be is not dependent on people. It needs to put structures and procedures in place to outlast all of us. So what we don't want to happen is that inclusion is only a high priority because certain members of the foundation are driving that. But if they leave, then inclusion doesn't become an agenda anymore and loses its status. So we have to work at a school level, at a national level. So we work very closely with the Ministry of Education. We're very fortunate to have a very close relationship with the Ministry of Education, again, about setting high expectations, not looking at a ceiling for our children. And if something doesn't exist, let's go and create it. Let's go and make something happen. So having that backing and again, being firm about our beliefs that our children have that basic human right to access everything and being the advocate, not being afraid to be the voice for our children, the voice for our families, engaging with our families. Our parents' voices are more powerful than our voices. Our parents speaking about their child, speaking about their country, speaking about what they want for their child, what they need for their child is incredibly powerful. So engaging with our parents, listening again, it's not making assumptions about what should happen, but having the conversations with the people who are impacted and will be impacted by the circumstance. So again, student voice, the pupil voice, the family voice, the parent voice. What do the families want? What do the families need? And then taking parents on the journey with us. And we've had many examples in the years when I've been at Renard where engaging with our families and sitting back and letting our parents stand up and speak is way
Wow.
more powerful.
Well, talk to me about the parent engagement because I mean that is huge, isn't it? Really,
Yeah,
you emphasize the strong partnerships with your parents.
yeah.
So talk to me more about the engagement that you have with parents and how important that is.
It's vital. It's at the core of everything. If we don't engage with our parents when we're only partially succeeding in our mission, because it means then that we can only control the 5 to 6 hours a day where our children are physically with us in the building. But then the rest of the day and the weekends and the holiday time, what will happen to our children there? So working in partnership with our parents is really important, and that's on many different levels. It's a one-on-one level. It can approach of a parent sitting with myself or any member of our team, because we have a very diverse staff team, and our parents will build connections with different people in different ways because of what they may need or how we can support them, or purely because they just have a better relationship with that person. So we employ that open door policy, and whoever is the most appropriate person at that moment in time is the person the parents will engage with. It could be in clusters, it can be in class groups, in department groups, in age phases. It depends on what we're doing. If we're looking at training and workshops, a diverse mix of parents there. I think it's the whole spectrum of that one-on-one to the whole school. We look at everything there. And what we see as well is our responsibility is not just to the 144 sets of parents of our children, but actually the parents of children throughout the country who are the parents of children who are autistic. So we don't see this as we only have a commitment to the people who we are providing a direct service to. Actually, we have a broader mission, a broader vision, a broader commitment to be open to all of our parents. So we signpost parents. I met with a parent last week of a non-RENAD student who was relatively new into the country, who just, we connected because there's a small community, and the parent to me was just, where do I start? So well, the response is, well, where you start is, please come to our school. Please come and have a sit down with me and with our team and let us share what we know. But then what I also did was connected her with one of our current parents, because again, I can't speak and I can't present and give advice through the eyes of a parent, because I'm not a parent of a child in our school, but we have many parents who can. So we can provide, we can signpost, we can advise, we can support, we can train, we can do all of those things. But to connect a parent with a parent then is really powerful. So that makes a really huge difference. And I'm sure that will over time impact positively on both families, really.
So obviously working in the UK, how does it compare, or working in Qatar, should I say, how does it compare working in the UK in terms of working in a special needs particular school?
It's a lot more similar than people would probably think. Children are children wherever we go in the world. So if I've worked with children in the UK for just under 20 years, mostly in special needs schools, how the children present is very similar to how the children will present in my current school. If you look at autism, the children that I'm working with now compared to the children I worked with in my previous school in Chester, would present in a very, very similar way. The difference, I suppose, is being mindful of the culture and the context in which you are placed. So we have to be very mindful in terms of our approaches of being respectful of the culture that we sit within, making sure that our curriculum, our approach, our interactions are culturally sensitive and preparing our children for their country. So what we don't do is lift what we see as the best practice from the UK and try and replicate that. We take best practice in our autism approach from around the world, but we modify that and we amend that and we think very deeply about that to ensure that it is appropriate and respectful of the culture where we are. And that's where, again, the linkage with parents and with our Qatari national staff is so vital. We don't make assumptions. We have dialogue. We listen. We take feedback. But yeah, if you took this down to the pure, how do we support an autistic child, you wouldn't see anything massively different in the practice in a classroom in my current school as you would see in a classroom in my previous school. But if you went around the school and looked at what we do then that sits in our broader curriculum, that's where the differences lie.
And in terms of communication, what forms of communication are you using with the children?
So we are very much moving towards a dual language approach in our school. So when the school was first established in 2016, it was established as an English language school. So English was the language of the instruction. Now, we have students in the school, English is an additional language for all of our children because all of our children were all born in their home country in Qatar. So every child is a Qatari national. We have children whose parents purely speak Arabic at home. We have children whose parents only speak English at home. We have children whose parents' families speak a combination of the two. Again, very much what we've evolved towards in the last few years is a dual language approach. So what we would do if you came into our classrooms and looked at maybe the PEC symbols or the visual symbols, well, those symbols would be in the written form would be in Arabic and English.
Okay.
When we recruit any of our colleagues, we look to recruit colleagues who can speak Arabic and English. So in each of our classes, we have at least one member of staff who speaks Arabic. We still have to look at autism practice has to be the predeterminant because you have to know autism and be able to support an autistic child first and foremost. But the language element is really, really important. And that permeates through our communications with our parents. So when we communicate with our parents, if there's a meeting, we would have documents, we would have letters, we would have PowerPoints, anything we share in Arabic and English. We'd have colleagues in sessions who can translate. Anything that we send home would be obviously in both the languages, but very much language of instruction now. We can facilitate both and we can switch that. So whatever a child needs. Again, we very much see the approach always in our school and in all the schools I've worked in as we start with the child. We don't try to put a child into a box. We're not trying to push something onto a child. And since we've really developed our Arabic language instruction, we see the difference, because we've seen some of our children who would previously struggle to understand instruction in English. And when that same instruction is given in Arabic, the level of understanding really increases. So again, that just shows and highlights how the responsibility sits with the adult to find the way, not for a child to have to conform to a school set approach, really.
That's brilliant. And I suppose the benefit of where you're at, and you touched on it really, because you're not following a particular curriculum, you're kind of amending the curriculum to fit your students, aren't you,
Yeah,
really? So
we are. Yeah,
you're able to pull the best of the best autism specialist teachers, inclusion assistants to come and work with your
yeah.
children, right?
We are. We're in a very, very fortunate position, again, sitting within the Qatar Foundation, that we can look at, analyze, reflect upon what is best autism practice. We can adapt that. We can amend that. We can bring that into our school. And when we're employing, maybe if it's maybe a teacher or a senior leader or a therapeutic member of staff, we can look across the world. Within the foundation, we employ colleagues from everywhere in the world. It's nowhere is off limits to us. So we can place our advertisements. We can look at what we need as a school. We can see who applies to us. We can attend recruitment fairs. We can work with specialist recruitment companies to find the very best people. Because what's important to us as a school, it's not just who is the most qualified, because that's just one part of it. It's the person. Who is the right kind of person to come and work in our school. You can be the most qualified person, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're the right person. So we have a minimum level in terms of the qualification experience, but we go much deeper than that in our recruitment processes, and look at the human being, because to work in our school, you have to have those human qualities. So you will not be successful in our school, and you will not be the right person for our children if you can't connect, to empathize, to set aspiration, to challenge, to have a sense of humor, to be able to see the positives in those challenging days. So the right person is at the core of everything for us, really.
That's where our conversation started off, wasn't it? Where we started talking about, and the title of our podcast, Looking Beyond the CV, is purely about what Transform are about. And I think it's so important, particularly in an organization. I mean, for every organization, really, what a CV can actually tell about someone could be one thing, but actually meeting that person and actually kind of seeing that person beyond the CV and looking at whether, as you say, are they going to be a person of fit not only for your school, but also for the pupils is important.
And I think that is becoming and will become even more important, having that human face-to-face contact. So if we think about the recruitment processes this is my 7th year here now. So in 2018, when we started recruiting for the following academic year, you had the CVs, you had the letters from people, and you could start to get a feel for that person. Now, if I look back to last year when we recruited, most of the letters, 90% of the letters that we received, were actually AI generated through ChatGPT.
Wow.
So you read these letters that were so polished, were so amazing, but were they truly reflective of the person who had sent that through? And it's only when we then had that face-to-face time with that person, to engage with them, to bring them into our school, to spend time with our children, did we really truly meet the real person. So I think that will be a challenge for all schools moving forward, of in the time where we are now, where people can use different platforms and apps to create a letter of application and to create a CV which looks wonderful, but that may not match the person. So I think we should never move away from that human element, really.
I totally agree with you, and I think it comes back to safer recruitment as well, which is a policy that we've taken from the UK to ensure. I mean, we've got a responsibility, haven't we? Really, that every single teacher or candidate that we place to work in front of children, need to make sure that we have a rigorous compliance criteria or checks that we go through to ensure that they're not only right for your school but safe to work in your school as well. And I think there's no skirting around that. But coming back to the face-to-face interaction. Have you kind of made a point of part of your recruitment process that you can have face-to-face interviews as part of it? I mean, how are you managing that process at the moment?
That's really something that we as a school have always placed really great emphasis on, of having that face-to-face element. So if we are hiring, if we're recruiting, and if we shortlisted someone who is in country already, we would always invite them in for a face-to-face interview. So it would never be an online interview. What we would also do within that process, before we even get to looking at references and all those, we kind of support it. We'd have them spending some time with us physically in the building, and working with some of our teams on for a short amount of time, to be in the classroom, taking the feedback of our broader team. We have very rigorous processes in terms of reference checks and police checks and all those elements there that we would do to make sure that we are completely watertight there. When we recruit from overseas, we would travel to a country and have a recruitment process there. So we would travel, again, multiple staff following the safe recruitment guidelines to interview
Yeah.
in that face-to-face way. So it would be quite rare for us to interview, appoint somebody without ever having physically met them, because we are holding the safety, the well-being, and the future of our children in our hands here. So not doing that in the correct way, that's not an option for us. So we would invest the time, the energy, the finance into doing that in the right and most correct way, and that has paid dividends for us. The colleagues that we've appointed, we have a very strong team, and the proof of that is that we don't lose people in our school. It's very, very rare that we would lose a member of staff. We gain staff every year because we are a growing school, but we don't have high turnover because we invest a lot of energy and time and focus into who we are recruiting in the first place.
And I think that's where I think it's brilliant to see, by the way. I think we've got our recruitment event happening on the 18th of January, which will be an online event. And the only reason we're having it online, and you and I have discussed this, that we would love to make a face-to-face event, but we want to make it global. And we want to bring in the best candidates from all over the world, right? So we want the opportunity to showcase the Qatar Foundation for what you guys are actually doing, because it's incredible. But from the event, we're hoping that you might be able to shortlist some people to actually come to Qatar and have a in-person recruitment event, so that process can be followed through.
Yeah.
But I think the whole concept of what you guys are doing is incredible. And
Thank you.
but talking about that, where do you see inclusion going, particularly in Qatar at the moment? Is there an evolution? Is it developing? What's the future look like?
I think in terms of inclusion, things are developing rapidly. If we look at, there are kind of two elements. You have the Ministry of Education, and then you have the schools that are non-Ministry of Education schools, and they fall under a number of different kind of designations, really. But there's a strong intent in the country to ensure that provision for every child with special educational needs is there, the right provision, whether that be a specialist school setting such as my school, which is purely focused on autism, or whether that's integration, inclusion within a mainstream setting. So there's a will and there's a desire within the country to ensure there's a breadth of options for students who have additional needs in a setting that is most appropriate to meet their needs. There's a lot of investment that's taking place in terms of the different entities, the Ministry of Education, as I mentioned there, to ensure that there is enough provision. Things have accelerated very quickly in the 6 years that I've been in the country already. I have no doubt if we look ahead in the next 5 to 10 years, the number of specialist provisions will significantly increase. The number of opportunities within mainstream provisions, whether that be integration, whether it's satellite provision, whether it's unique provision dependent on the needs of an individual child. But I see within the country in Qatar where we'll reach a point in the not too distant future where every child, every student, every young person can access an educational setting which is right for their needs, and that's to be applauded. There's been a big shift already, and there's been a big change in the 6.5 years I've been here. And as I say, if we fast forward 10 years, I think that will have grown even more.
I definitely, I've seen change within a year. So, and that's across the GCC. And I think inclusion is now really at the forefront of everyone's mind. It's on the agenda of most countries in the GCC to improve and better. And I think what you guys are doing is definitely incredible, and you're leading the way. But what advice would you give individuals of people that are aspiring to work within special educational needs? Perhaps they may have focus on autism already, or they've got experience working with that within their family, or there may be a teacher that they want to step into the special educational needs world. What experience you got for all kinds of people?
I think I suppose what I would say first and foremost is take the leap, believe in your abilities, and take the leap. If you have a passion for special educational needs, you can learn the other elements that you need, but you have to be passionate about SEN. So if there's a passion within you to work with children for whatever reason and with whatever type of needs, if the passion sits within you, then take those steps. Try and gain some experiences if you have the opportunity to, maybe in specialized setting, make maybe contact with a local special school or a place that has an SEN provision, and spend a bit of time there. Speak to colleagues who already work within the field. But if the passion's there, because I followed that myself, I moved from mainstream into special education. I've never looked back. And I would say that any colleague that I've met, I've not met many colleagues who've come into special ed and then step back into mainstream. Once you're in the special educational world, it grips you, it holds you. It's a privilege to work with children within this field. So if the passion's there, believe in yourself and take that step, and then just be open to learning and relearning and being challenged, and know that it won't always be positive, i.e. there will be challenging days, there'll be really challenging days, but we can learn something from those challenging days too. So it's just go into it with open eyes, learn, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I stepped in to the specialized world of SEN after teaching for the first 7 years. I was on my pathway to being an experienced teacher. I felt like an NQT when I moved into special ed. I had to learn how to teach again, but I had amazing people around me, and I wasn't afraid to ask questions and to show my vulnerabilities. So I would say, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to say that you don't know something. Don't feel you have to step in and present as if you know everything. It's okay not to know, but try to find out. So draw on the experience of colleagues, ask those questions, be vulnerable, learn, be open. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are a part of learning. I've made many, many, many mistakes in my career, but I've made them with the best intent to learn, and you learn from them, and just draw on those knowledge. But just yeah, I'm very biased because I've worked within this field and within this world, but I think it's within the education setting. The field of special educational needs is the best field to work in. You can't replicate the feeling of working with our children, I don't feel, in any other form of education.
Do you know, Matt, your passion is definitely infectious, and I can definitely feel that from this podcast alone, you're probably going to get a lot of interest of people wanting to come and work in your school. But we're also hosting a webinar, which is week commencing the 6th of January, where you'll have the opportunity to present more about the Qatar Foundation and Renard Academy as well. So our listeners will be delighted to hear that, I'm sure. But where else can listeners find out more about you and Renard Academy's programs, and where can they seek support if they want to?
Absolutely. I mean, if we have information on our website, so if people Google Renard Academy, that would bring you through to our website. We also have our Instagram page for our academy, and very similarly, the same in terms of the Qatar Foundation. So looking at our main website for our foundation will give you an overview of the whole foundation and where we sit within that. I'm very happy to be contacted kind of directly. My contact details are on the website. So if there's anybody who wanted to reach out via email, or through a message through our school's Instagram, I'm always really happy. Again, the field of special education, I think you'll find this across the world, that people are very happy to connect and to kind of listen, or to have a dialogue, or to share experience, or to engage in any kind of conversation. So as I say, my main contact details are on our website, so I'd be very happy to receive any communication from anyone really who holds an interest in either working in our school or just in the field of special education in itself.
Brilliant. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time today. I am absolutely thrilled to have you talk about what you're doing. And I think our event that we're having on the 18th of January is one of its kind, or the first of its kind, where it's a specific recruitment SEND summit. And just promoting inclusion within the Middle East is something that I'm really excited to be able to do, and showcasing what you guys are doing is at the forefront of that. So, Matt, I'd like to say thank you, and we'll see you week commencing the 6th of January.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure. Appreciate
No
it.
problem. See you soon.
See you
Bye
soon.
bye.